Applause, John Israel.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Today is such a great topic of, learn closing skills, right? Because you guys are all, it's the summer. For most of you, I'm guessing this is like your first time selling Cutco. Like this is your first summer experiencing this. Some of you might be coming back for a second summer as an assistant manager or support staff. And yeah, man, I started selling Cutco back in June of 2002. So about 17 years ago, I was a 19-year-old college kid going to Gonzaga University in Washington State. I'm from San Diego, so I was born and raised in Southern California. And, for me, selling Cutco was a unique experience because some people work because they want to, some people work because they have to. I definitely had both, right? I kind of wanted and had to. And I just remember going out to college and having this experience of like kind of things were paid for and handled, and had kind of some family issues. And I came home after my first year and my parents were like, sorry, we can't do this anymore. If you want to keep going to school, you're gonna have to pay for it yourself. And the challenge there was that I had never held a job longer than a month, right? Back then in 2002, the minimum wage was $5.75. I worked at, which tells you how long ago that was, my goodness. And I had only had a job for 1 month at a movie theater the previous year, and I had to quit because I got mono. And so I didn't exactly have an illustrious work career. And also, you're not going to pay for a private university making $5.75 an hour. So I remember instantly, like I wanted to get something that I had a little bit more control over, getting a higher income. And I'd never considered sales because I had family who was in sales, and I was like, it's kind of like cheesy. Like I didn't have any desire to sell anything. But then I got a letter in the mail, and I came in for an interview. And when I came in for an interview, I saw there was a kid from my high school who was working. And it was kind of funny. It was one of those, it's like some people, like you see people selling Cutco and you're like, oh, wow, I'm so inspired to sell more because of you. And for me, that was the case. But my inspiration was like, dude, this kid was kind of a dork in high school, right? Like if this kid can sell a lot of Cutco and make good money, like I can probably do this. And then I started the job and found out it was a little bit harder than I anticipated. It wasn't as easy to sell knives. Although I did make some sales. My first sale was a homemaker to my parents. I tried to sell them off of it. I remember just reading my manual and saying, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you, would you like to get this set of Cutco today and get your kitchen tools and shears for free? And then I just like looked up, and then my mom looked at my dad, and she's like, I think we should get it. And he's like, okay. And I remember like, don't do what I did, which was question your customer, right? And I was like, are you serious? Are you sure? Are you sure you want to get, like, Mom, we have smaller sets. You can get something smaller. And because in my head, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm having to pay for school on my own because you guys don't have any money, but yet you're about to buy $1,000 set of knives. And so it was like this really kind of interesting construct in my head of like understanding money. And, I had an okay fast start, but I didn't, I felt there was more. So that kid who I went to high school with, I asked him to take me field training because he was one of the top reps in the office. And I went out to see him do 4 appointments in a day. And the first one, and all of the people had Cutco, by the way, which was interesting because a lot of you guys were seeing people who already own Cutco. How many of you guys have seen somebody who already owns a set of Cutco or some pieces of Cutco? Yeah. Okay. So when I went out and I was with him for a day, every customer he saw had Cutco. The first one we saw already had a Homemaker Plus 8. And so when he went through everything, she bought one table knife because she was missing a table knife because it just got lost. The second appointment, lady bought nothing, right? So not very exciting. Third appointment, we go off, and similarly, this customer has a ton of Cutco, and he sells a vegetable peeler. And I remember thinking, like, I was with him for the whole day, and I'm watching all these appointments back to back. And right now, we're like 2 for 3 for like less than $100. And I just remember thinking, not being too impressed. But I also appreciated seeing that this top salesperson was having, challenging appointments or having appointments where he didn't sell much. And then the next appointment, I remember we went into this woman's house and she was like totally not warm to us. She was not interested in building a rapport. She was just like, I've got one piece of Cutco. I don't need any more. And she's like, and it was interesting because in my head where I would have gone is like, okay, well, this is probably someone I won't sell Cutco to. Let me just get through my presentation and move on. But the guy I was with, his name is Joe. Joe was like, oh, okay, no worries. Do you have any family? And then he just started building rapport, and she was just talking about her family and her kids. And it was interesting because one of her reasons she said she didn't want to buy anything or wouldn't buy anything was because she has 2 kids who are getting married the next year. And he really honed in on that. He's like, oh, that's amazing. Like, how crazy to have 2 weddings at the same time. And then he just kind of continued building rapport about family. And then he said, well, one thing you might consider is getting Cutco as a wedding gift. And she was just like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then he went on through the appointment. And the next thing you know, we're walking out of that lady's home with an order for 2 Homemaker Plus 8s. And I remember sitting in the car with him, and I literally said, how did you do that? Right? How did you go into this customer's home that was like very clear, I'm not buying anything, and then we walk out with it was over 2,000 CPO on that one order. And I remember his answer was really interesting because he said, the thing you need to understand about this business is this is totally different from any other job, because the way that Cutco works is that the better you get at selling this product, the more you make. So if you want to make more money, if it's really important for you to make as much money as you can this summer to pay for all the school that you need, you just need to get really good at mastering selling Cutco. And what he encouraged me to do is he said, read books, listen to audios on Vector Connect, go to conferences, like learn as much as possible, because it's so interesting. Like, I want you to just conceptualize this, because when I understood this was like the game changer for my Cutco career, which is when I understood that if I did an okay demo, and let's say let's just use the example of 10% commission, right? Which y'all are 10% or more. Let's say I was at 10% commission and I made, a $250 sale, right? I would make $25. Now, if I was more skilled at how to make a connection with this person, or how to better show options, or to be more comfortable selling a bigger set, if I could do those things, and then my order was, instead of $250, it was $350, I literally made 30% more on the same time by being better at my job. And I want you to think about that with another job, with any other like typical hourly paid positions where to keep your job, you need to learn more. Like, in order to actually like stay employed, you have to learn all this stuff just to be able to keep your job, just to get paid $10 or $12 or $15 an hour. Like, that's like the minimum standard. With Cutco, when you get better, you actually make more. And so for me, it was like this really mind-blowing thing, which is like, okay, cool. So you're telling me there's a direct correlation with how well I can do my job and how well I get paid. Well, then I'm just going to get really freaking good at this job. And because I watched this kid in front of me, I literally watched him, because he was at 50%. He made $1,000 in an hour. Now, granted, he was at 50% and I was at I think that time I was at about 20%. But either way, he made a $2,000 sale, and I would not have made that because of where my mindset was and because of my comfortability in selling anything. And so what I learned was like, okay, if I can get more confident and if I can get more skilled, I can just make more with every single appointment. And to me, that was really empowering. And for you guys, that should empower you to get that the better you are at your job, the more you're going to get paid. And we've all had people in our lives, in our families, who can often complain about their job because maybe they pull more weight than someone else, but they get paid the same. Or they get frustrated with someone at work because they're just not working really hard. Well, what's great with Cutco is you don't have to complain about what the person that's sitting next to you is selling or not selling, because that has nothing to do with how much you make. Everything is dictated on what you put forth. So what I love about this topic that we're going to talk about, which is closing the sale, is that all of this is 100% in your control, right? Who you see is within your control. What you say is within your control. How you go through the demo is what's in your control. Now, we can't always control what the customer says or what the customer decides to do, but you can get good at this job. Just consider that like it is possible to sell to 90% of your customers and to have an $800 average order. And you know why I say that? Because there are people in Cutco who have those averages. And if those aren't your averages, that's fine. All you need to know is what's possible. And if where you're currently at isn't at the maximum maximum capabilities, then there's room to learn. And so this is going to be a really great topic, because what I'm going to teach you guys is some of the real fundamental, what I want to say is selling philosophies, like things to consider about how to sell more Cutco. But what's great is this is a topic that is not just related to Cutco. Raise your hand if you have noticed that as you've been selling Cutco, you've started to become better at other parts of your life that are not related to Cutco, like your ability to communicate with people, talk to people, ask questions, ask for what you want. Yeah, it's natural that that's going to happen. And that's just going to keep happening more and more the better you get at this job. So kudos to you for being here early in the morning for a conference call, because this is going to be helpful. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I want to start by talking about the overall philosophies of selling. So let me ask you a question. What's your belief about selling? What does it mean to sell something to somebody? Now, if you're anything like me, what that answer was when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, to me, selling was making somebody do what they don't want to do, right? It's like someone who doesn't want to buy something, making them buy it, which is like being manipulative or pushy or whatever. Like that, to me, is what I believed sales to be, because that was my experience of it. Like when I would go to the mall and the people at the kiosk trying to pull you in, like put some lotion on your hand, or like change your cell phone plan or whatever, right? So you guys understand what I'm talking about. To me, that's what I thought selling was. So I want to give you a new definition of sales. Okay, so to be good at sales, here's all it means. It means to be influential. It means to be influential. And there are good influences in life and there are bad influences in life, right? There are people who help us make good decisions, and then there are people who help us make not good decisions, right? And the funny thing is we're all influential, but we just don't realize it, right? If your friend wants to, if you want to go out or do something fun or, whatever, and your friend doesn't want to, what do? You use your influence. You say, oh, but it's going to be so fun. Do you know who's going to be there? Here's what we're going to do. And you use your influence such that they want to do what you want to do, right? Now, when it comes to selling Cutco, it's an interesting thing, because you're not dealing with a friend. You're not dealing with like someone who's your age. You're dealing with someone who's much older. So how interesting is it to be able to influence somebody who's much older than you? And the way that you do that is just to understand that the selling process, again, it's not making somebody do something they don't want to do. What it is you're helping people make good decisions. Selling is helping people make good decisions. And what I love about that definition is that I feel good if what my job is simply just helping somebody make a good decision. Because when we're in a customer's house, and if they don't have any Cutco, is it a good decision to have Cutco? Yes, it is a good, smart decision. And I didn't always believe that. I didn't always understand that, because I was like, I don't know. I mean, people have knives, like they've had knives. Like I always thought it was funny when I would go over to someone's house and they'd be like, all right, John, well, I'm not going to buy anything. You see, we already have knives. And I used to be like, oh, got it. They have knives. So they're not going to buy anything. And I used to just like take it as like, oh, they're not going to buy because they have knives. And then the more mature I got, I would be like, yeah, no freaking kidding, you have knives. You have to have knives as a human being. You're not going to rip your food apart like a savage, right? You're going to need a knife. You're going to have to cut your food with something. And everything shifted when I remember doing my first appointment with somebody who had Cutco. And for any of you guys who have an opportunity to see someone who has Cutco, That's a great customer to see. And for me, it was Mary Jaggers. And Mary lived right across from me growing up. She babysat me when I was a little kid. And I remember I called her for an appointment. And she's like, yeah, come on over, sweetheart. And then I remember, I saying, hey, grab your favorite knives out. And she grabs out like these 2 old brown trays of Cutco. And she said, John, this is the first major purchase that my husband, Jim, and I made after we got married. And I was like, how old is this? And she's like, this set is 36 years old. And I remember thinking like, holy cow, like this is 36 years old. And then I said, well, why did you buy it? And then she was just like, we cook all the time. And what I understood is that, if you want something to last, you're going to have to invest in it. So it was way more money than we had at the time, but we made the decision to invest in it. And it's been the best investment we've made for our kitchen. We've sent them back every 10 years for sharpening to the Cutco factory. They've always mailed them back to us. We've never had anything broken. She's like, this is literally the best purchase I've ever made in my life. And I remember being like just blown away that this person I had known for so long in my entire life had made this huge investment. And she was saying it's the best investment she's ever made. And she still had them 36 years later. Well, let me ask you this. How many customers are you going to go into their house and talk to them about knives? And they've had the same set of knives that they've had and enjoyed and used for 36 years. Or even 10 plus years for that matter. There might be some at 10, but hardly any over 20. And I'm going to guess basically none over 30, unless it's like a family heirloom. So the point is that everybody has knives, and you're going to hear that objection, that comment, that question. And they're saying that because they don't have Cutco. Because when if they don't have Cutco, they're not going to understand the construct of what a really, truly good knife actually is. And that's your job. And that's the beautiful thing. How many of you have had an experience, by the way, where you did a demo for somebody and they said, I'm not going to buy, and then they bought? Oh, almost everybody, right? How interesting, right? That people will literally say, I'm not going to buy. I've already got knives. I've already got good knives. And then they buy. Why is that? Why is it that you think somebody said, I'm not going to buy, but then they do buy? Why? Because it's a good product, because the demo works. When you cut rope with somebody or you cut leather with somebody, they're not expecting it to work that well. When they hear about the guarantee, they're like, oh, wow, my knives don't have this guarantee. And the whole concept is, if you're eventually ever going to rebuy knives in your life, Mrs. Jones, which you're going to, if you're eventually ever going to do it, you might as well get Cutco right now, because you're going to have it forever and you're going to enjoy it forever, because we're going to take care of it forever, right? And there's no other company that's going to say that, that's going to offer that, that's going to honor that. And that's what makes Cutco famous, right? So I wanted to begin with just talking about the mindset of selling, that it's not something that we do to a customer, but it's something that we do for a customer, right? Because while, yes, I sold, $18,000 worth of Cutco my first summer, and I made $5,000 in commission approximately, I don't have those $5,000 anymore. They are long spent and gone. I used on my tuition immediately when I got to school, right? But guess what? Guess who still has their Cutco? Every single one of those customers that summer still has their product. And I didn't quite get this until I started going to like my family reunion a couple years after I was selling Cutco. And then people would ask me like, hey, are you still selling Cutco? I need to buy some steak knives. Or, oh man, I'm so glad we bought those knives from you, because they're like the sharpest things we've got. We love cooking now because we actually have good tools to use. And it made me feel good that people I know were buying it, because here's another thing that I remember being really frustrating, is that there was a family member that I was avoiding selling Cutco to, because I was like, oh, I don't know, think they really have a lot of money. I don't want to make them feel bad and show them something they're not going to be able to afford, blah, blah, blah. So I never did a demo. And then it was finally like my second summer, and I was ready to start I was getting ready for a summer conference 2 push, and I was like, okay, no stone left unturned. I'm going to call everybody. I'm going to do a demo with everybody. And I called this person, and they were like, oh yeah, I was wondering why you never called me last summer when you were selling Cutco, because everyone told me you were selling Cutco, and I actually needed to buy some knives. But since you never wound up calling me, I actually wound up going to the store and I bought like a whole set of Wusthof, and I spent like $1,000 on them. And I remember, and it was my uncle Chris. And I remember thinking like, you know what? That's me. That's all on me. That is totally my bad because I prejudged. I didn't think he was a good prospect. I didn't think he had the money for it. And you know what? Hey, I owned it. And all that made me feel was like, I need to make sure I show everybody Cutco that I can, because you never know. And they're going to be grateful that they bought it from you, because again, they're going to have those knives way longer than you have your commission. And you can feel good about that, right? So you have to sell more Cutco, you have to have the right mindset that it's a good thing, that what you're doing is actually really helping people make a good decision. So keep that in mind as we go into this conversation, all right? So when it comes to selling more Cutco, one of the things that's going to really help you sell more Cutco is to have straight up full conviction in everything that you sell and everything that you make, right? So how many of you guys have used every piece of Cutco in your demo kit at home cutting food? Cool, a handful of you guys? Awesome. So what you'll find is the more you use the product, the more excited you're gonna be about it. And especially the more pieces you win in your fast start, the more pieces you win during contests with your manager, use all those pieces or bring them to an appointment and ask your customer, how would you use this? Let them cut with it. Let them teach you how to use the knives so that every time you do a presentation, you're more and more educated. Because when it comes to selling more Cutco and helping people make decisions, all it really is, it's properly educating them. It's teaching them the correct ways of using a knife. And so one of the things that will help you with doing a better demo, all right, this is step number 2. So step number 1 is having the right mindset. Step number 2 is to be curious. Be curious with your customers of why they should buy Cutco. It's a very important distinction. Be curious of why they should buy Cutco. Now, I shouldn't say most, a lot of people, especially when they're newer selling the product, their mindset and their belief and their attitude is like, oh, I wonder if I'll make a sale. I wonder if they're gonna buy. And so they go in like kind of wanting, hoping maybe they're gonna get something. And you can tell a representative's maturity when they go into an appointment and they can tell oh, I'm gonna guess this customer is gonna be a studio customer or a starter set customer, or, oh, this is totally a homemaker house, or I don't know, it's not in the nicest neighborhood. Maybe this is at least a 3-piece special house, right? When you can go into an appointment with that expectation, you're on your path to sales success. And anything that doesn't believe that's possible with every appointment, that you can make a sale with every appointment, that is totally you, that is not your customers, right? And here's a fact that I remember learning early in my sales career. A customer will never buy what a representative is not comfortable showing. A customer will never buy what a sales rep is uncomfortable showing or selling. Meaning, if you are not comfortable showing the homemaker, they're less likely going to buy. Now, granted, really what's going to help you there is to you got to kind of have to fake it till you make it. You've just got to I remember learning the lesson, because I wasn't confident with that, by the way. I thought it was totally asinine and crazy that any human being would ever spend $1,000 on knives. I'm like, who in their right mind would do that? There's so many other important things to spend money on, right? And I remember my manager saying, John, again, that's your mindset. That's not your customer's mindset. So just don't get in the way of what they might want to get. And so one of the things he taught me to do is when I asked for the order was to do the water close. Do you guys know the water close? All right, the water close is how you ask for a big order when you're not confident. And the way that you do it is it's really simple. When you're getting ready, and let's say you're totally nervous, that's completely fine to be nervous, is to just say, okay, so Mrs. Jones, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, would you like to go and get this set of Cutco today and get the kitchen tools and shears for free? And then immediately grab water and start drinking. The reason why is because what would happen is if I wasn't, this is really funny because it's really interesting to go field training because I like to watch people's face when they ask for the order. Because a lot of people, and you don't notice this because it's you in the moment. When you say, would you like to go ahead and get that? Most reps, they literally go like, and they totally like, they make this like really uncomfortable face. Well, how comfortable is a customer going to be buying something when you're acting that way? It's just not consistent, right? How can you say Cutco's a great product, and then when you ask them to buy it, and then you're like, yeah, it's kind of good. Do you want it? I'm going to hide, right? And it's okay to be nervous, by the way. I think everyone's nervous the first time you sell something. It's completely natural. You've never sold knives before. And here's the thing. By adding a really simple strategy like that to become more confident by drinking your water right when you ask for the order, what happens is you have customers that start saying yes. They say, okay, right? Because again, you're just not getting in the way of what they want to buy and what they can afford. Just don't choke on your water when they say yes. Don't be like, like spit your water up, right? So just be like, okay, great. Well, congratulations. You're going to love your Cutco. Well, I write out that order. Let's take a look at the accessories, right? So be curious about what the customer might buy. And here's what's going to help you with that. And this is regards to closing. So I'm going to kind of back up a little bit, right? So when it comes to doing a demo with your customers, and I say be curious, this is going to help you sell more Cutco for a couple of reasons. So number one, a couple of things to be curious about. Number one, be curious about what makes your customer tick. Be curious about what your customer likes, what they value, what they care about. And I'll tell you why, because when we walk into a customer, like everybody buys things, right? I could even say to you, you guys all buy things. And you spend money on things that I might think are totally crazy. It might be video games. It might be a game console. It might be music. It might be concerts, right? I have a friend who budgets literally like, thousands of dollars a year just to go to concerts. I haven't spent $1,000 in my lifetime on concerts. Right? I wouldn't value something like that. But that doesn't matter. That's not my interest, right? That's what he values spending money on. He likes the experience of it. So what I like to do in building rapport, like in when I say being curious, is to ask your customers just like, hey, so how long have you lived in the neighborhood? What do you do for work? Tell me about your family, like what, and you don't have to be as awkward as to be like, tell me about your kids, right? Because that sounds super weird, right? But you might just notice pictures of their children. Oh, how old are your children? Oh, what are their names? Do they still live in town or have they moved away? Are they in high school? Are they in college? And you just kind of you just engage natural conversation about their family, right? You notice that they have a golf trophy. Oh, do you like to golf or does your husband like to golf? Oh, awesome. Where do you guys go golfing at, right? And then you ask questions to get to know them. And then here's what I like to say is you ask questions until you notice them get a little excited. Right? Until they start to get a little excited about what they're talking about, because that means they're talking about something they care about, that they're interested in. And what's great is when your customers are starting to talk about what they care about, what they're interested in, like their kids, their job, what they do for fun, their next vacation, when they're talking about those things, they're feeling really good. And your job is to literally just sit there and listen. And then when you ask a question, then they answer for you, ask a follow-up question. Like, what was that like? Or say more about that. Or why is that interesting to you? Or how did you get involved in that work? Because then it just kind of keeps them talking about what they care about. And then ultimately what happens is one of people's favorite things to talk about is themselves. And so as they're talking about what they really care about, they don't quite understand this, but what they're starting to feel is like, wow, I really like this kid, right? I feel good with this kid in my home. I feel comfortable with this person. And it's such a respectful thing to really listen deeply to people, because most people never listen. And especially parents with their own kids, like how often do you listen to your parents, right? Like, I don't know, for me, I didn't really listen to my mom very much growing up. And so when a customer who is a mom or a dad or whoever feels totally listened to, they're like, oh, I love this kid. How can I help them? And then if you've done a really good job listening to them, what do you think they're going to do for you? They're going to sit there, going to be like, hey, enough about me. Tell me about you. Don't you have me have some knives to show me or something like that? So as often as possible, I try to let the customer start the demo, because if they're starting the demo, then that means that we're building a really good connection. But here's the other thing. As you're building rapport, you're starting to notice what does this person care about? In other words, what do they spend money on and why do they spend money? Because for some people, They might not talk about vacations. That might not be a thing that they're talking about. But you might notice, like I remember an appointment where this customer, they lived in a trailer park. It was a trailer that they owned, granted, and they were married, but it was like not a clean house. Like I remember like they had to like shove dishes over on the table so that I could set my knives up so we could do the demo. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what's going to happen here. Like I might walk out with like a petite Carver sale, right? They just didn't look like they had much money. And I remember like when I was like, oh, so what do you guys do for work? What do you do for a living? And the wife stayed at home and the husband was a mechanic. And I remember thinking like, oh, mechanic. I remember there's like a brand of tools that's supposed to be like really, really expensive. And so then I just asked him, I was like, hey, I'm really curious as a mechanic, what type of tools do you use? Like what brand? And he's like, oh, Snap-on all the way. He's like, I've got like $70,000, $80,000 invested in my shop from Snap-on tools. Like 100%, I'm a Snap-on guy. And I remember thinking like, holy crap, this guy lives in a trailer park and he's got 70 grand invested in his tools. So what did that tell me? What that tells me is that this guy values quality things that are going to last a long time. And it also shows me that this guy is willing to invest in money in things that are gonna last a long time, that are good investments. And I remember going through the demo and I would just kind of talk, and I would just really talk about what you'll love about Cutco is you're gonna have them forever. What you're gonna love about Cutco is they're gonna be guaranteed, just like your Snap-on tools. If they break, we're gonna replace them for free. So I was selling to the fact of how he buys. Right? Now, by the way, if I met a customer and she lived in a really nice house and she had really nice things on the walls, and she shops at Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus and she's just like really done up well, I'm not going to really talk about Cutco being like Snap-on tools. I'm going to say, yeah, you'll really like Cutco because it's the best. Like they're the best knives on the planet. They're in some of the really finest homes. They've got beautiful color options. You can get white, you can get black. Cutco is kind of like the Rolex or the Bentley or the Lexus. Sometimes I'll use like the car, if they have a nice car in their garage, like when I walk up, I'll use their car as an example. So yeah, Cutco is kind of like the BMW of knives. It's like the really premium quality. You're going to have it for a long time. It's going to work really well. That's like what Cutco is. And so then all you're doing is you're speaking their language of why they buy, right? This is a great analogy someone gave me. Think of it like a dog whistle, right? So when you have a dog whistle and you blow into it, can you hear it? Can other human beings hear that dog whistle? No. Who hears the dog whistle? The dogs, right? So when you think about your customers, it's similar. It's like you're blowing a dog whistle, but in a degree of how they listen. You're blowing it to what they're going to listen to that makes sense to them. Because if I'm going to sit here and talk about how great Snap-on tools are and how they're going to have these knives the rest of their life and it's going to save them money, but this customer buys things because they're the best and because of the brand name and how it's going to look, I'm not blowing the dog whistle. I'm not speaking their language. I'm speaking someone else's language. So reason I say be curious is because the more curious you are with your customers, the better you're going to be able to sell them the way they want. And ultimately what happens is when you're talking their language, there's not a lot of selling. There's just educating. And then at the end, you just say, do you want to get that? And then they say yes, because you were speaking their language. So what I'm teaching you guys, by the way, is can you still do this while reading your manual and following your approach? 100%. I'm just teaching you the ways to kind of add some nuance to it so that you can still do the demo, because you don't want to skip parts of the demo. Like as much as you think you might have it down, stick to your manual and your script. I remember I saw a girl who was 5 years into the job and she sold a crap ton of Ultimates, and I was really confused. I'm like, she sells way more Ultimates than me. And she was, again, 5 years into the job, and I asked her to go field training. And so I went field training with her, and I literally watched her and by the way, she's super sharp, super smart, and she knows the demo word for word by heart. And she still pulled out her manual and said, do you mind if I read from my manual so I don't miss anything? And it was so amazing because they were like, oh yeah, sweetheart, it's okay, just read your manual. Now she knew what she was doing. She knew what to say, but she still had it there because number one, it made her feel relaxed, but also it made the customer feel relaxed because they weren't feeling like they were getting a professional sales presentation. They were feeling like they were just helping out somebody who was going through a demo. And then at the end of it, she sold an Ultimate set. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, is that it? She's literally just reading her freaking approach. But now she did build rapport. We cut a lot of food, and she was really, it was a nice home, and she knew how to talk to the Mrs. Jones. They had a nice car in the driveway, so she knew how to speak with them. And at the end of the day, they just bought an Ultimate set because they were a customer who could afford it. And they've already spent tens of thousands of dollars on other things in their house that they like. So she just matched it up with that. Okay. All right. And then here's my last tip that I want to give you guys to sell more Cutco, right? This is really, really valuable. Always sell outside your comfort zone. Okay. If you want to sell more Cutco, always sell outside your comfort zone. Meaning, if you're uncomfortable selling and showing the homemaker, do it. Get really good and practice selling and showing the homemaker. If you're okay with that, work on the Signature and the Ultimate set. If you're getting good with that, start adding flatware. Start being comfortable. Start showing the cookware. If you're good with that, then start offering buying sets for their families and kids. Because again, your customer will never buy what you're uncomfortable selling. And I remember, I'm just speaking from experience. My first summer, I sold a ton of homemakers, like an absolute crazy amount of homemakers, because I was comfortable showing the homemaker. And I remember getting to a space where I had, with the Ultimate, I was literally, I'm just being honest, I was so embarrassed by the Ultimate. I was like, this is ridiculous. Nobody needs this many knives. I literally took the Ultimate brochure out and I put it in the back of my book because I'm like, no one's ever going to buy this. I'm not even going to bother showing it to them. Well, guess how many Ultimates I sold? 0. And I remember finally the reason I actually started selling a lot more homemakers is because I went to a workshop on how to sell the Ultimate. So I started really practicing and working hard on selling the Ultimate. And every appointment I would try and show and demo and sell the Ultimate. And you know what? For that whole first summer, nobody bought. But I remember my last week selling Cutco during Summer Conference 2 Push. I sold 3 or 4 homemakers in a row. And I remember and I was annoyed because I was like, damn it, I haven't sold the freaking Ultimate set. And I remember coming into my office and turning in my orders, and my manager was like, dude, did you just sell 4 homemakers in a row? I'm like, yeah, I can't sell a freaking Ultimate for my life. And he's like, dude, you just sold 4 homemakers in a row. Be happy about that. And I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of cool. And then what happened is it just took more time. And I remember I came back for my second summer and I sold several Ultimates. I think I sold 3 or 4 Ultimates, 2 of them in the same week, because I was more confident, I was better at it. And again, ultimately, you're going to start selling more of what you're comfortable with. And then after I started getting good at that, then I was like, cool, let's start showing cookware. And I remember the first time, and it took me a couple of years, the first time I was on an appointment, and it wasn't in a nice neighborhood. It wasn't in a big house. It was a really average family. This is when I was at school in Washington State. And if, by the way, you think that your customers can't afford Cutco because it's too expensive or whatever, here's the thing to understand, or that they don't make enough money. My biggest average order was in Spokane, Washington. And when I lived in Spokane, Washington, do you know what the average home price was? About $120,000. The average home price was around $120,000 to $150,000. Think about that. My best average order was in the lowest cost of living area. And the reason that I think that was is because, they valued cooking. They valued family. And if they can buy that in Spokane, Washington, can they buy that in Burbank, California? Can they buy that in Glendale? Can they buy that in freaking Pasadena? Absolutely. So the point is that you just got to get comfortable showing it. And I remember the first time that I was always trying to push the envelope with every order and trying to make it bigger than what I was comfortable with. I remember asking for an order, and it was an Ultimate set and a full set of cookware. And the first payment was $900. And I remember thinking about that. And I remember just, again, same thing. Would you guys like to go and do that today? Drink my water. Because again, I was 3 years into the job, and I was still nervous asking for a big order. And I remember the customers being like, oh gosh, John, we would love to do that, but that's just, yeah, I don't think we can do all that. You know what? Let's just get the knives today. And then so I was like, okay, cool, no worries. And we're writing up the order, and they're feeling bad that they're only buying an Ultimate set. They're like, I'm really sorry, John. I wish we could buy more, but really, this is just all we can budget right now. But definitely come see us again. We'll totally buy the cookware next time. And I was like, yeah, no worries. It's totally don't worry about it. It's okay. You guys are just going to get the Ultimate set. And I remember thinking how crazy is this, right? My customers are feeling bad that they're only buying an Ultimate set. And the only reason that's the case is because I am selling out of my comfort zone. So if you want to get good at selling Cutco, just always sell just a little bit after your comfort zone. And if you're a little nervous to ask for the order, or if you're a little nervous to ask for the upsell, meaning that, they're buying a homemaker and you're going through and you say, hey, do you have any weddings coming up, any birthdays? And, they do, and they might need a set for that, if you're uncomfortable saying, hey, would you like to add that? Then you should ask, because again, the more you push the envelope in your comfort zone, the more you're going to sell naturally. And that's just a fact, right? Because we don't always sell exactly what we offer, but we typically sell that or less. But it's very unlikely you're going to sell more than what you're comfortable showing your customer. Okay. So I just want to kind of pull back and reflect on some of the things that we covered today. So what we talked about was starting with having the right mindset about selling and about closing. What is selling? What is closing? It's not something that we do to a customer. It's something that we do for a customer. It's helping them make good decisions with their life. Because again, they're going to have the product way longer than you have the commission. So you can feel good that whatever you show them, whatever you sell them, they're going to get the better end of the deal out of it, right? We also talked about being curious and asking your customers questions, getting to know about their life, getting to know about what they care about. Because inside of that, we get to build a connection, but we also understand more like, why do they spend money? What do they spend money on? So that we can translate to, well, how would this type of customer buy Cutco? Do I need to focus on the value, that it's something that they're never going to have to replace, or the guarantee? Or do I need to focus on the best, the fact that it's going to be something that they're going to enjoy, their friends are going to love, that it's going to look great, that it's a quality brand? Is that the way that I need to sell? So learn how to sell to the customer's needs. And then lastly is always sell outside your comfort zone. If you're a little uncomfortable with something, that's perfect. That's exactly where you need to be. And I want you to consider that every time in life, you're always selling a little bit out of your comfort zone, right? Everything's new until it isn't. When you think of like applying for a job that you've never had because you've never had a career with your life, you're selling outside your comfort zone. You're making an offer. You're like, I don't know, I might be good enough. I might not. I have no idea. I've never done this before. So what you need to do is you need to sell outside your comfort zone. You need to be like, I don't know. Well, apparently I got college educated and, I sold knives for a living and I've learned some stuff. So maybe I'm good enough, but I'm just going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to act like I'm going to be out of my comfort zone. I'm going to ask anyways, and you're more likely going to get it. There's so many times in life where this is going to be related, where you're going to be selling outside your comfort zone, and it's good for you, because ultimately that, if you guys go to a conference and you meet people, you see someone who sold $2.7 million worth of Cutco and you're like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? You know how it happened? Slowly but surely, selling out of my comfort zone. All the way up to when I got my biggest sale of my career, and it was about 2 years ago. My biggest sale of my career was a client who bought 32,000 CPO on one order. Do you know how I got that? Because I got comfortable selling bigger packages. And my biggest order prior to that was like, $5,000 or $6,000, which was big at the time. You know how I got that? Because I got comfortable showing the ultimate with cookware. I got comfortable with that because I got comfortable selling the ultimate. I got comfortable with that because I got comfortable selling the homemaker, right? Everything is selling outside your comfort zone. So if you just want to have a bigger life, if you see results that people have and you're like, I want that, how do I do it? That's the answer. Sell a little bit outside your comfort zone, stay hungry, stay curious, and have fun, right? Like I think the last thing I would say is just treat this like a game. Any guys gamers in there? You guys play video games, anything like that? Okay, treat this job like a video game, right? Like every demo you do, it's like you're getting experience points, right? It's like every time you make a sale, it's like you're adding like a new shovel to your backpack, or like a new weapon, or a new whatever, right? And every time you do it, it's like it. And I remember teaching a rep, like I just said that to one kid who was like a total gamer. I was like, yeah, dude, just treat it like a video game. It's like the more experience you get, the better you're going to sell, and then the more money you're going to make. And he was like mind blown. He totally was just like really, and then he treated selling Cutco like he treated video games. Like, how some of you guys buy the gamer magazines and watch the blogs, same thing. He would just like study his manual like a crazy man. And he would go to conferences and he would go to meetings and he would learn all this stuff. And then, you know what? He sold $30,000 his first summer, and he made like 10 grand before he went off to school. And he was 18. He had just graduated high school. Because again, he had never sold knives in his life. He'd never sold anything in his life. He was a musician by trade. So it doesn't make sense that he would be a great salesperson. But it did, because he found a way that he could be excited and have fun selling Cutco. So those are my final words, guys. Go out there, have fun, sell lots, and have a great, I don't know if you guys are in a push period, but have a great push period you guys got lined up ahead of you.